The Ontario government says it's committed to addressing mercury poisoning in Grassy Narrows. People who live on a First Nation have shown symptoms for 50 years. The province plans to expand mercury testing around the site of an old paper mill in Dryden. Testing last year found high levels of mercury in soil samples. The mill dumped 9,000 kilograms of mercury into the English Wabigoon River in the 1960s. The government says it will identify contaminated sites and take steps to stop further mercury from entering the water. Environmentalist David Suzuki took part in a meeting with the Ontario Premier and the Grassy Narrows Chief to help make this decision. He joins us now. Mr. Suzuki, thank you very much for taking the time.
Glad to be here.
What do you make of this step by the provincial government to move in this direction?
Well, I think it's absolutely historic. We've had over 4 decades of governments on all sides of the political spectrum basically punting with various reasons for not doing anything. And I think all Canadians should be very impressed that the Grassy Narrows people have hung in there all of this time demanding that something be done, all the while exhibiting the effects of the mercury on their health. This is a cause, I think, for all Canadians to be very, very pleased that Premier Wynne has finally taken a concrete step in saying, we're going to clean up. This remediation has got to take place. And I think it's a very happy moment because we're going to see government starting to take action before the next election.
Mr. Suzuki, take us inside that community and sit inside one of the homes. What are people living with? What are the symptoms of this?
I've never been to Grassy Narrows. I only know what I see in the press. But I can tell you as a Japanese, I've always been very interested and concerned in the effects of mercury ever since it manifested itself in the terrible neurological consequences in Minamata in Japan. And it's been shocking to me that Japanese doctors came to Canada to tell us about the problems that people are having, very severe neurological defects, which this year, more Japanese doctors have said it continues to be a serious problem, that 90% of people around Grassy Narrows exhibit some aspect of mercury poisoning. So it's a very severe effect. We've seen these really terrible shots of people who are so affected as to be virtually helpless, immobilized by this terrible disease.
Now that the Ontario government is getting more involved in this, do you expect things will move quickly? Or, I mean, 4 decades, 5 decades have passed. How quickly is this going to progress?
Well, I think to Premier Wynne's credit, once she had seen the scientific data, and it really was scientists now that I think have helped to drive this, from David Schindler, one of the world's experts on water, who said this can be cleaned up and must be cleaned up, to Dr. John Rudd, who is a world expert on actually dealing with mercury contamination. And he presented in a very logical way what can be done to remediate the impact of mercury there. And to her credit, once Premier Wynne had seen that there are, in fact, steps that can be taken without worsening the situation, she said, yes, we have got to do this, and we must begin as soon as possible. She's talking about a few weeks to begin the process. There's still a lot of work to be done. We still have to find out where exactly, after 40 years, there's still mercury coming in. People expected, the reason governments were able to punt on the whole thing was the assumption, well, with time that mercury would be diluted out just by the natural action of water, but the levels are still very high. And here I think we have to thank the Toronto Star for sending reporters and activists in to actually show in the soil around that in fact mercury levels are still very high. So it's going to take time to find out how is that mercury entering into the English Wabigoon system. And once that's known, then it's very possible, as Dr. Rudd showed, to intercept that water that's loaded with mercury and actually clean it up and return it to the system free of mercury. That's a very exciting prospect, but it's going to take some research before we get to actually building that plant. In the meantime, he outlined a process of beginning to cover the mercury that's already in the riverbed with clean clay that comes from upstream, as well as introducing nitrate or even just air that will help to transform the mercury, the form of methylmercury, into a harmless form of mercury by simply bubbling it into the riverbed. So there are concrete things that can be done. They're not going to be overwhelmingly expensive, and it's very urgent that we start acting now. And I just want to give credit to the Grassy Narrows people who have kept at it and said there is a problem, do something about it all of these years. Good for them. And I think all Canadians should be very proud of what Premier Wynne has now committed herself to.
Environmentalist David Suzuki, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.